And great pleasure to welcome back to the show today. Man was with us a couple of years ago when his previous best-selling book was out, In Fed We Trust. We're joined today by the Wall Street Journal economics editor, David Wessel, who has a brand new book out called Red Ink, Inside the High-Stakes Politics of the Federal Budget, trying to put in perspective where all the money is going to and where it will go to. And David Wessel joined us by telephone today. David, good to talk to you again. How are you doing?
I'm great.
Good to have a chance. It was, I guess, about 2 years ago, August, I think, when the previous book came out. In February. Is it 3 years ago? Wow, I thought, all right, the time flies, but a lot has happened since then, hasn't it? Economically.
Certainly.
Didn't sound like it, no. I mean, I guess when we talked to you last time, we were kind of going through still the hardest part of the recession, I suppose, you could, if you want to call it at that point. Are we out of it yet? What do you see?
Well, the recession is over in the sense that the economy is growing, but it's growing so slowly that unemployment remains painfully high, and it's not likely to come down unless something changes. You know, we have 8.3% unemployment. We have more than 3 million people who've been out of work for a full year or more, and those are just the ones who say they're still looking for work. The economists are predicting that the economy will grow maybe at 2% for the rest of the year. That's not enough to bring down unemployment. So when we talked 3 years ago, I didn't have any idea it would take us so long to dig our way out of this mess.
You mentioned the unemployment numbers about a week or so ago when that report came out. Of course, that's going to be used by both sides, mostly by the Republicans now with the election coming up. But that number, I guess, is, you can almost say it's higher than that because it doesn't always take into account people that may have given up, or maybe people underemployed or part-time, maybe self-employed doing some stuff, odds and ends here and there. So that number could be higher, right?
Right. I mean, it does have people who tell the government they're working part-time or full-time, but if you're not looking for work, the government doesn't catch you in the official statistic. You can look and see how many people fall in that category. I think you're right about the campaigns. I mean, Mitt Romney has a big advantage that the economy is not doing very well, and when you look at the polls, people say they think he would do a better job on the economy than Barack Obama, or they don't approve of Barack Obama's economic policies. And the hard thing that the president has to do is he has to convince people it would have been worse if not for him. And as Barney Frank once said, that's a really hard bumper sticker. It would have been worse if not for me.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing now. People tend to vote their pocketbooks. Obviously, it's a presidential election, and it's the hugest issue. But a little bit different now. I guess people are trying to compare this coming election with maybe what happened in 1980 with Jimmy Carter. And although back then you had huge inflation rates, I think that's kind of the difference, right? I mean, they were about 15% inflation, or higher back then.
Right. There's a lot of, this is like 1980, this is like 2004. Who knows? These kind of historical metaphors can be, I think, taken to extremes. I do think that if the election were fought only on the economy, it should be a win for Mitt Romney. And the fact that Mitt Romney is neck and neck with Barack Obama, given how lousy the economy is and how unhappy people are, tells you something about either the quality of the campaigns, and as you know, Mitt Romney's been criticized quite a bit for running a kind of clumsy campaign, or about the fact that there are an awful lot of other issues that are motivating people, whether it's immigration or gay marriage or world peace or pro-life, pro-choice.
You talk about in the book, you just mentioned health care, and of course that's a huge issue every election, but a lot of money goes toward that. Of course, with what they call Obamacare now, that's going to kick in, I guess, more officially in the next year or two. But talk a little bit about that, what you mentioned in the book about the health care. That's a huge part of the budget, and why there's so many, why we're so in debt, right?
That's right. I mean, in 1960, before Medicare and Medicaid, health care spending was about 10% of the federal budget. Today it's 25%, and it's on track to hit 33% in another 10 years unless something changes. The federal government covers more people, and the President's Affordable Care Act, as he likes to call it, Obamacare, his critics call it, would increase the number of people who are covered by government insurance, and each one of them, on average, costs a lot more because health care costs are going up faster than anything else. It's inevitable that we're going to spend more on health care as we have an aging society. We'll have the number of people over 65 will go up by about a third. over the next 10 years. But what we have to do is find a way to slow the growth of healthcare spending, or we'll be forced to cut other things to make room for it. That's really easy to say and really hard to do.
Yeah, nobody wants to be the one to make the big cuts, and nobody wants to be on the other end, the person that's cut. So it's always been that type of thing.
The gap is bigger than it's been in the past. The gap between what we promise in benefits and what we're collecting in taxes is bigger.
And this brings me to my next question. When we say trillions of dollars of debt, I think a lot of people, and myself included, not quite sure who do we owe that money to. A lot of it we owe to ourselves, right? But not all of it, right? I mean, other countries have investments in us. Can you kind of give a quick answer to that? I know it's a complicated question, but who do we owe that money to?
It's not complicated. In 1970, we owed 95% of the money we owed to Americans. Today, it's only about half the money we owe to Americans. We have been borrowing the savings of the rest of the world for some time now. Half of our debt is held by foreigners, and about half of that is held by, of all people, the Chinese. Even though they're not a rich country, they save a lot of money. Their government sucks it all up and uses it to buy treasury bonds. And that's going to grow unless we learn to live within our own means.
Tax increases, another issue, obviously, with the upcoming election. The president wants to raise taxes on people making over a certain amount. I guess $250,000 is kind of the number given there. Does higher taxes to people that maybe make more money, is that a good idea when those are the people that may create more jobs? Or in your opinion, what do you think?
Well, I think that the first question you have to answer is, can we do this without raising taxes? I find it very hard to see how we can cut spending enough, after all, we live in a democracy, to solve this problem without raising taxes on somebody. The second, Mitt Romney disagrees, so we'll see. The second question is, if you're going to raise taxes, who should you raise them on? And it's important to think about this tax code because it does have economic effects. And if you overtax the job creators and the investors, then you will probably hurt the economy for everybody. But at the same token, we've had higher tax rates on upper-income people before. We had them in the 90s, and the economy did pretty well. And somebody's going to have to pay higher taxes, and it's a choice we have to make. Do we want to take more of the money from the people at the bottom, more of the money at the top, or do we want to do it evenly across the spectrum so everybody pays a little more? I think it's important to think about that, but it's not the kind of thing that a journalist should be deciding.
You talk about in the book, around the mid-'90s, we actually had a federal budget surplus under President Clinton, and that was hard to fathom then. What happened to that surplus, David?
It's a great question. In 2001, the Congressional Budget Office looked at it and said over the next 10 years we'll have surpluses of $6 trillion. And Alan Greenspan, then the Fed president, worried, what will we do after we paid off all our debt? Well, instead of $6 trillion in surpluses, we had $6 trillion in deficits. So how can that be? Well, there's really four things. One, CBO got the economy wrong. It was much worse than they expected. Second, George Bush cut taxes in 2001 and 2003, and Barack Obama extended those tax cuts. Number three, we spent more. We had two wars that we didn't pay for. We expanded Medicare prescription drugs. Democrats did that in cooperation with President Bush. We didn't find a way to pay for that. We dealt with Homeland Security after 9/11. And then we had the Great Recession, and we spent a lot of money on that. So if you guess wrong on the economy, it's worse than you expect. You cut taxes, you spend more than the CBO had projected you were spending at the time, then you end up with deficits. If you have deficits, you have to borrow more, so you have to pay more interest than CBO had expected. Add up those four things, and you can, and I do it in the book with numbers, and that's what happened.
No matter what you have gone to college for or research economy, there's still a lot of guesswork involved, right? No matter how much you know. So it makes it a fascinating study on your end, but it's a difficult topic, isn't it?
It's always hard to forecast the future. It tends to surprise us.
Well, the name of the book is Red Ink, and I know we have limited time today. Could talk to you a long time on this topic, but the name of the book is called Red Ink, Inside the High-Stakes Politics of the Federal Budget. We've been talking with David Wessel today, economics editor of the Wall Street Journal. David, give out a website if we get a hold of the book, or get a hold of you if they like.
Sure. That's right. You can reach me or get the book at www.davidwessel.net.
Great. David, appreciate you taking a few minutes. I know you're on a busy schedule today. Hoping that we can talk to you again. It won't be another 3 years, but thanks for joining us.
Okay, thank you.